What happens when one of Hollywood's most adored actors walks into what he believes will be a routine? Friendly interview only to find himself ensnared in a verbal trap that would make even his Twilight co-stars squirm. What you're about to see is the rare moment Robert Pattinson's legendary composure finally cracked. Live on television. And trust me, you've never witnessed anything quite like this. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below. Because every single word exchanged in this interview escalates the drama. From the moment Robert stepped into the View studio that morning, the air felt charged. There was an electric tension, subtle but undeniable, that even the seasoned crew couldn't shake. Pattinson sat in the guest chair, his calm, measured demeanor intact as he adjusted his jacket, ready to discuss his latest film, a psychological thriller generating serious Oscar buzz. What he wasn't ready for was Joy Behar. So, Robert, Joy began, her voice carrying that unmistakable tone regular viewers recognized as a prelude to trouble. I have to ask you about something that's been bothering me for weeks. Robert tilted his head, offering a polite smile. Of course. What's on your mind? Joy leaned forward with the precision of a predator zeroing in on prey. I've been reading about your latest film, and I have to say, I'm concerned about the message it's sending to young people, especially young women who still see you as that vampire heartthrob. The co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't in the pre-interview briefing. Whoopi Goldberg shifted in her seat, sensing exactly where this was going. I'm sorry, Robert said, his British accent calm but edged with curiosity. What message are you referring to? Joy's eyes sparkled with the thrill of the impending verbal strike. The message that it's okay for men to manipulate and gaslight women, which is exactly what your character does in the film. And, given your history playing a controlling vampire boyfriend, I find it troubling that you keep choosing these kinds of roles. A hush fell over the studio, broken only by the quiet hum of rolling cameras. Robert's jaw tightened subtly, but his voice stayed steady. Joy, I think there may be a misunderstanding. Have you actually seen the film? I've seen enough, she shot back dismissively. I've read the reviews, spoken to people who've seen it, and frankly, I don't need to spend 2 hours watching a woman get psychologically tortured to know. This isn't something we should be celebrating. But that's the point of the film, Robert replied, a sharper edge creeping into his tone. It's meant to expose those behaviors, not glorify them. My character is the antagonist. The story is built around showing just how damaging that kind of manipulation can be. Joy scoffed, the sound echoing like a gauntlet thrown down. Oh, please, Robert. You can dress it up in all the fancy film school talk you want. But at the end of the day, you're profiting off the exploitation of women's trauma. And the fact that you can't see that that's part of the problem. The cameras captured the exact instant something shifted in Robert's expression. His polite mask remained, but behind his eyes, a new intensity burned. Joy, I respect your right to form an opinion about films you choose not to watch, he said, his voice still controlled, but steel-toned. But I find it incredibly irresponsible for someone with your platform to make sweeping judgments based on secondhand information. Irresponsible? Joy's voice rose an octave as she leaned back theatrically. I'll tell you what's irresponsible, Robert. It's a grown man who built his career playing a stalker vampire, now taking roles where he psychologically torments women for entertainment and pretending it's artistic, when it's really just the same misogynistic garbage wrapped in indie film pretension. The other co-hosts looked ready to disappear through the floor. Sarah Haynes opened her mouth to intervene, but Robert cut in, voice razor sharp but calm. That's an interesting perspective. Joy, especially coming from someone who has spent decades making a living tearing down other people on national television. If we're talking exploitation and profiting off controversy, I think your own career might be worth examining. The studio collectively gasped. Joy's mouth fell open, but Robert wasn't done. You know what I find truly irresponsible? He said, voice calm but cutting. A talk show host who ambushes guests with personal attacks disguised as social commentary. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work, but it's clear you had no intention of a conversation. You just wanted a grandstand for your highlight reel. Joy recovered quickly, dripping with condescension. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for asking tough questions. This is exactly what I mean, Robert. The minute someone challenges you, you play the victim. Classic manipulation. And frankly, it proves my point perfectly. Your point. Robert laughed, but it held no humor. Your point seems to be that you can say whatever you want about someone's work or character. Without even basic research, and when they defend themselves, you call them manipulative. That's not journalism, Joy. That's bullying with better lighting. The studio air grew thick, heavy enough to cut with a knife. Every camera focused on the two combatants, capturing every micro-expression, every verbal jab. The other co-host froze, unsure whether to intervene or watch the meltdown unfold. Joy's face flushed, her voice rising with indignation. Bullying. You want to talk about bullying? You've made millions playing characters who intimidate and control women. And now you sit here trying to intimidate me for calling you out? The only difference is Zim, not some helpless character in one of your films. I'm not going to be silenced by your charm or your victim complex. Robert's composure wavered, hanging by a thread. Victim complex. Joy, you've spent 10 minutes attacking my character, my career choices, my personal integrity, based on a film you admit you haven't even watched. You've accused me of promoting violence against women, being manipulative, exploiting trauma for profit, and, when I correct your mischaracterizations, you accuse me of playing the victim. Do you see the irony? The only thing I see, Joy snapped, is a privileged actor upset that someone finally called him out. You can sit in your expensive suit, use all the big words you want, but at the end of the day, you're just another Hollywood pretty boy who thinks he's above criticism. Her words hit deep. Everyone in the studio saw it. Robert's hands, once resting casually on the arms of his chair, clenched into fists. His jaw worked silently. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but dangerously deliberate. Above criticism, he repeated, each word measured. Joy, I've spent 15 minutes listening to you attack my career, my choices, my integrity. I've responded to every accusation with facts, with explanation. I've tried to engage in good faith, even though it became clear within the first minute that you weren't interested in a discussion. So, enlighten me, how exactly am I acting above criticism? Joy waved a hand dismissively, emboldened by what she saw as his frustration. Oh, spare me the wounded artist routine. Robert, you act like I'm attacking you personally when I'm just pointing out that your career choices have consequences. You can't hide behind artistic integrity when people call you out for glorifying toxic masculinity. Glorifying toxic masculinity? Robert's voice rose for the first time, forcing everyone in the studio to sit up straighter. Joy, have you listened to a single word I've said? The film explicitly condemns the behavior you accuse me of promoting. My character is the villain he's punished. The story is about a woman finding the strength to escape his manipulation. But you wouldn't know that because you've based your opinion on gossip and headlines, not the work itself. Joy bristled. I don't need to watch propaganda to know what it is. Joy shot back, her voice rising with each word. And frankly, I'm tired of men like you lecturing women about what we should or shouldn't be offended by. You don't get to decide whether your work is harmful to women. We do. Robert's voice turned icy, his eyes flashing with the storm building behind them. What exactly does that mean, Joy? What kind of man am I in your expert opinion? Joy leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. You're the kind of man who thinks he can charm his way out of accountability. The kind who gets defensive and hostile the moment a woman challenges him. The kind who profits off stories about women being hurt and acts surprised when women take issue with it. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert fixed her with a long, steady stare. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but each word hit like a sledgehammer. You want to know what kind of man I am, Joy? I'm the kind who spent 6 months working with domestic violence counselors to ensure my performance was accurate and respectful. The kind who insisted part of the film's profits go to organizations supporting abuse survivors. The kind who has used his platform to speak out against the very behaviors you're accusing me of promoting. But you wouldn't know any of that because you're too busy building straw men to tear down on national television. Joy's face reddened, but she pressed on. Oh, how convenient. Suddenly you're a champion for women's rights. Where was all this noble activism when you were playing Edward Cullen, teaching teenage girls that stalking was romantic? That was the final straw. Robert sprang to his feet so fast his chair toppled backward, sending a collective gasp through the studio. His hands shook with barely contained rage, and his voice cut through the air like a blade. "How dare you?" The word came out low, raw, and furious. "How dare you reduce my entire career to some twisted narrative in your head?" I was 19 when I was cast in Twilight. A teenager, taking the biggest role of my life. And I've spent the last 15 years trying to use that influence for meaningful work. I've chosen projects to challenge harmful stereotypes and tell stories that matter. But none of that fits your narrative, does it, Joy? Joy tried to interrupt, but Robert's voice rose, overriding hers, his British accent sharpening with every syllable. "No, you don't get to talk now. You've had your 20 minutes. It's my turn." The co-host sat frozen, witnessing the verbal carnage unfold. "You want to lecture me about accountability? Let's talk about accountability, Joy. You've built a career on manufacturing outrage, tearing people down for sport. You profit off controversy where none exists. And now you're trying to destroy someone's reputation based on willful ignorance and assumptions. What am I being held accountable for? Exactly? For making a film you refuse to watch? For taking roles that challenge audiences? For using my platform responsibly?" Joy stammered. "You're not a victim here, Robert. Accountable for what?" Robert's voice was rising to a fever pitch now, cameras capturing every second of his controlled fury. "For being successful enough to warrant your attention? You claim I perpetuate harmful narratives about women, but can you name a single one? No, because you haven't done your homework. You're just repeating buzzwords and hoping they stick." Joy's mouth opened and closed, struggling for a comeback. Robert's voice dropped to that dangerous, quiet tone again, the one that made the room lean in. "But you know what the real tragedy is, Joy?" He said, every word measured, every pause loaded with intensity. "The real tragedy is that you had an opportunity today. An opportunity to have a meaningful conversation about representation in media, about the responsibility artists have to their audiences, about the complex relationship between entertainment and social issues. And instead, you turned it into a highlight reel for yourself." Joy froze, caught off guard, while the studio sat silent, watching a masterclass in composure, rage, and righteous indignation unfold live on air. Instead, you chose to turn it into a circus act, something choreographed to humiliate your guest and pump out viral clips for social media. Joy finally found her voice, though it broke on the way out. "I was trying to have that conversation. You're the one who got defensive and started attacking me personally?" Robert's eyes narrowed. When he spoke, every word was sharpened to a surgical edge. "I got defensive. Joy, you opened this segment by accusing me of glorifying violence against women. You called my work misogynistic garbage. You implied that my career choices make me complicit in harming women. You questioned my integrity, my character, my motivations." He lifted a hand slightly, all while openly admitting you haven't even watched the film you're condemning. Joy's jaw tightened, but he didn't stop. "And when I tried to explain the context, the message, the point of the work, you dismissed every syllable as manipulation or playing the victim. If that's your idea of constructive dialogue, then we are indeed living on very different planets." Whoopi Goldberg cleared her throat softly, her voice uncertain. "Maybe we should all just take a breath." "No." Robert cut her off without even looking her way. His gaze stayed locked on Joy, unwavering. "We're not taking a breath. We're finishing this." Because Joy clearly has more she wants to say. He tilted his head, inviting her, challenging her. "Go on, Joy. You've been building to something since I walked out here. You didn't bring me on this show to discuss my film. You had a point you were dying to make. So make it." Joy's face twisted with a mixture of anger and humiliation. She inhaled sharply. "Fine," she spit out. "You want my point? Here it is. You've spent your entire career playing men who hurt women, and now you're trying to convince us it's art. You've made millions, selling fantasies about male power and female submission, And the moment someone calls you out, you throw a tantrum like a spoiled child. The studio went dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Robert stood perfectly still, expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and lethal. There it is. The real Joy Behar, ladies and gentlemen. He took a single step closer. When the facts don't support your narrative, you default to personal attacks. When your arguments collapse, you go for character assassination. And when someone refuses to bow to your bullying, you accuse them of acting like a child. He let that settle before continuing. You know what, Joy? You're right about one thing. I have made millions. And I've used that money to support causes I believe in, to help people who actually need it. To make films that challenge how audiences see the world. His voice hardened. What have you done with your platform besides tear people down and stoke division? Joy's face drained of color. How dare you question my contributions? I've been fighting for women's rights longer than you've been alive. Have you? Robert's tones sliced cleanly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot more like you've been fighting for your own relevance. You've built a career manufacturing outrage and exploiting controversy. And when the controversy runs dry, well, you just invent a new one. That's not true, Joy whispered. But her voice betrayed her, isn't it? Robert pressed, relentless now. Tell me, Joy, when was the last time you used this platform to actually help someone, instead of humiliating them? When was the last time you brought on a guest to celebrate their work rather than ambush them with bad faith questions? When was the last time you tried to build something positive instead of destroying anything that challenges your worldview? Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her co-hosts watched her with wide, horrified eyes. Robert leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a calm, haunting quiet. You want to talk about toxic behavior? Look in the mirror. You want to talk about people who hurt others for entertainment? You've turned public shaming into a profession. You want to talk about accountability? Then start taking responsibility for the real damage you do to people's lives and careers with your reckless accusations and willful ignorance. Joy pushed back her chair, beginning to rise. I don't have to sit here and listen to this, actually, Robert said, his voice stopping her mid-motion without rising even a decibel. You do. You started this fight, Joy. You brought me here under false pretenses. You attacked my character, my work, and my integrity without even doing the bare minimum of research. And you've spent the last 30 minutes trying to dismantle my reputation on national television. Leaned forward, voice steady and unshakable. The least you can do is sit there and listen to the consequences of your actions. Joy sank into her chair. Looking smaller than anyone had ever seen her appear on television, Robert straightened up, adjusting his jacket with deliberate, icy calm. You know what the most pathetic part of this whole performance has been? You could have been better. You could have asked thoughtful questions about the film. You could have engaged with the themes, the message, the actual content. You could have had a real discussion about representation, responsibility, and storytelling. He let the next words drop like a hammer. Instead, you went for the cheap shot, the easy headline. You chose ego over honesty, spectacle over substance. He paused, letting the silence become suffocating. I came here ready for a real conversation, ready to confront tough questions, with different perspectives, real criticism. But instead, I found a host more interested in performing outrage than engaging in anything meaningful. That's not journalism, Joy. It's not activism. It's cruelty dressed up as moral superiority. Cameras caught the exact moment Joy's composure finally buckled. Her face didn't show sadness, only the dawning realization that she had been completely, publicly defeated. Robert took a step back from the table, voice returning to its normal volume but still edged with steel. I think we're done here. And Joy, genuinely hope you take some time to reflect on what happened today. Not for me, but for every future guest who sits in that chair expecting basic dignity and professional courtesy. He turned to the camera, completely composed now. To anyone watching who wants to form an honest opinion about my film, I encourage you, see it for yourself. Think for yourself. Don't let a critic, a talk show host, or even me tell you what to believe about art. Engage with it directly. Challenge it. Decide what it means to you. Robert Pattinson walked off the View stage, leaving behind a stunned audience, shell-shocked co-hosts, and a humiliated host whose silence spoke louder than anything she'd said all morning. The cameras kept rolling as the studio struggled to process what had just happened. If this moment hit you hard, make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments which part of this confrontation landed the hardest for you.